Hi, Samantha. Thanks for the question about the discussion question 1 in Unit 4 this week. So I want to make this quick video and give you some of my thoughts about that question and maybe how you can approach it and answer it or try to make it make a little more sense for you. So basically, the premise of the question sets up this dichotomy between police as crime fighters and warriors and police as public servants. And it's kind of a little bit of the age-old question of how an officer should operate and view the citizens and the city that they police. And certainly there's evidence that a police officer has to actually be both of these things at the same time. But the question wants you to think about that dichotomy and think about how the ethics might change or how you might approach a job or a situation based on your personality or your view, self-image of yourself as either a warrior for the good side or public servants. Okay, so if you take a look down here at the instructions, thinking about the historical development of police and that, I want you to differentiate ethical viewpoints and models of police as crime fighters or public servants. So that's a compare and contrast conversation. So you're going to want to tell me what this means, what public servants means, and then the difference between the two. Okay? In the next bullet, explain as a criminal justice professor how these opposing viewpoints may affect your perception of yourself and the public. Right? So if you thought of yourself as the crime fighter, right, how would you view your job? And then how would that influence how you approach the public or approached your job duties, right? For instance, would it make a difference in your officer discretion? Would you treat people with more respect? Would you be less likely to use force? Would you be more likely to seek non-criminal alternatives to problems? Right? These are kind of the differences between these two groups of people, the crime fighters and the public servants. Okay? Examine the self-perception, the effect self-perception has on criminal justice professionals' ethical behavior and carrying out their assigned duties. Right? So how you see yourself and then how that perception affects your duties. Okay? I want to pull the video over to my next screen here. And on this screen, hold on just a second, I gotta pause. Okay, so on this screen, this is the last course that I had, and this is the discussion question we're talking about from another student. Blacked out the name here, but I wanted you to see what I felt was a really good post about this particular question and look at how she framed it. Okay, so this post received full credit, and I'm showing it for you here today for you to model and take a look at to help you understand what I believe is a proper and full answer to this question. Okay, so I don't want you to copy and paste this, obviously, but I do want it to help influence and inform maybe how you think about the question and how you approach answering the question. Notice here at the bottom, she also did bring in the readings for the week, which we always want to do that, right? The readings for the week will inform these questions, so you always want to reflect that in your writing. Okay, so this is a post that you can read and review for yourself to see how a student might approach this and get full credit. Okay, I'm going to pause you for a moment again. Okay, last but not least, bringing on this third computer screen, and over here I have a series of images. I just Googled police officer, as you can see, or Binged it, I guess, and see what kind of pictures come up. Okay, and I use these photographs. So, you know, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I think if we look at some of these pictures, it'll help to give you a sense of what we're talking about in this conversation, crime fighters or warriors versus public servants. Okay, so just looking down through these pictures, we see a lot of, I guess you would call it normal pictures, right? Cops, lack of tattoos, clean cut, facial shaved, uniforms pressed, right? We're still wearing neckties. Police still wear neckties as a sign of a professional demeanor or a profession, right? That flows all the way from the early 1900s, okay? And everything looks pretty standard, okay? Pretty standard Pretty standard visualizations here, right? Some uniforms different than others, but it gives us a sense of what this person is supposed to be about, and a at least a sense of a professional look and approach. Okay, now I want you to kind of compare these simple photographs. By the way, tattoos are starting to come in as all of the younger generation has them, so police departments have had to kind of ease up on tattoo policy a little bit, right? But think about these pictures here that we see of all of these public servant looking people, fairly happy looking people, and then we're going to get down here to the bottom a little bit and take a look at this picture. Now this picture is a little bit small, but I think you can probably see it well enough. How do you think this guy approaches his job? How do you think this guy views civilians as compared to those other pictures that we looked at? If you had to put on this uniform every morning, would it change the way you approached your job and thought about what your goal is for the day, right? Would it change the way you interacted with people? I think it would, right? Oftentimes in class I talk about, ladies, do you feel different when you have your favorite little black dress on versus your baggy sweatpants for Sunday afternoon watching football? Well, of course, right? Guys feel the same way. You give them a pair of cowboy boots and oh my goodness, their attitude grows 100%, right? Or changes 100%, I should say, right? And this is sort of emblematic of what the discussion question is about, right? Warriors versus guardians. How would this change how you think about things? This picture here, this is one of my favorites. This is a guy by the name of Skyler Dorr, and young Skyler here was actually the chief of police in this little tiny backwater podunk town in Louisiana, right? He policed a town of 2,100 people. Now, to give you a frame of reference, my college has 3,300 people in it. So, right, this guy's policing a nothing, quiet little town. And I would imagine when I first opened up this picture and you looked at it, your emotional response was probably the same as all of my other students, which is, wow, that's a big gun. And what does this image say to you, right? Is this a guy who's here to help you? Do you think this guy would qualify himself as a public servant just by looking at him? And yes, we are judging a book by its cover here, so I've never met this guy. But just through the image, does this guy look like a public servant, or does he look like a warrior, right? How does he see himself? How do you think he approaches his job, right? So this is a big issue. And the bigger conversation, which is not reflected in the DQ this week, is about largely about police militarization, right? And when you give a police officer this kind of equipment, do they start policing differently? Do they change how they approach their job and civilians and make decisions, right? Here's an article from the National Institute of Justice discussing this very topic, right? And they call it From Warriors to Guardians. Right? Recommitting American police culture to democratic ideals. And all of this conversation, this whole ethos, this whole ethics on how you approach, how do you see yourself and how do you approach people, it all flows down from this conversation about police militarization. It was brought to light during Ferguson, Michael Brown event, the Eric Garner in New York, the Baltimore riots, right? All of those things demonstrated to us that there is a significant difference in policing in America today versus, say 50 years ago, right? And so that's what the discussion question is about, is building your perception of are police warriors or guardians. It is getting you to think about how that perception might affect your self-image on how you approach your job, and then how that would translate into how you would treat other people out on the street. So I hope this video helps you to understand the discussion question and gives you some more frames of reference. Please make sure to read through the weekly material. You'll find several references about that in there, and I think you'll be able to answer discussion question pretty well. But as always, if you need further help, send me a message or give me a call, and we can explore this a little further together. All right? Good luck.